Hey, I'm Di McQueen, licensed clinical social worker, family and addiction expert. I'm here with Dr. Brian Jackson, my longtime cohort who specializes in the field of addiction. Welcome to Healing Families Shattered by Addiction.
Di and I have worked with addicts, alcoholics, and their families for over 30 years combined. Our podcast and coaching programs focus on families who have a loved one suffering from addiction. Our experience has been that this disease affects families as much, if not more, than the addict or alcoholic.
Is your world spinning out of control? Are you codependent? Are you experiencing worry, loss of sleep, and difficulty concentrating? If so, you're in the right place. Brian and I have both personally lived it, learned it, and now we're going to teach you tools and techniques on how to get your life back that you thought was shattered by addiction.
Okay, let's dive in.
Brian and I are so excited to introduce to you our new sponsor, Lakeview Health. They are a wonderful residential treatment center. Whether it's the family member who is looking for a place or the addict or alcoholic themselves, this would be the place that we would refer them to. Brian, you have many years of experience with Lakeview.
Yeah, Lakeview Health is a center of excellent addiction treatment. They take an evidence-based approach, medical approach to treating this complex brain disease. They hold the Joint Commission's Golden Seal, and they were voted one of America's best treatment centers by Newsweek magazine. They deliver dual diagnosis, gender-responsive, and trauma-informed care at their gorgeous facility here in Jacksonville, Florida. But they do see people from all over the world do come here to Jacksonville to go to treatment at Lakeview. Their levels of care include medically supervised detox, which a lot of people do need. Then they stabilize them in a residential rehabilitation and partial hospitalization program. They have board-certified physicians, master-level therapists, and they work to address the unique needs of each patient. So in other words, it's not a cookie-cutter program. They help individuals build skills for long-term sobriety. So if you or someone you know needs treatment, please visit their site at lakeviewhealth.com. We also have a hyperlink on our website at familyandaddictionexperts.com where you can just click and get some information about Lakeview Health. And Di, I think you have a number for people to call if they would like to inquire about treatment.
I sure do. That number is 888-480-3799. That's 888-480-3799. Give them a call. Hey everybody, this is Di McQueen, and this is Healing Families Shattered by Addiction, and I am delighted today to be joined by Mr. Dennis Cain. He is from Lakeview Treatment Center, one of our partners and sponsor of this podcast, to say the least. And Dennis is a marriage and family therapist. He is the family therapist over at Lakeview, and has been practicing since 2005 as a private clinician, and then came in to join this role. I'm delighted to have Dennis today because I think, we don't necessarily, and not every treatment center necessarily brings in the family as part of the treatment plan. And I think it's really exciting when, people realize the family is part of the problem, but also part of the solution. So, Dennis, welcome to our podcast, Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. And we're delighted to have you. So tell me a little bit about what's going on over there.
Yeah, Lakeview has been a great fit for me because they've given me an opportunity to kind of grow the family program there. We were having a conversation about post-COVID. We've expanded our reach, we've expanded our programs, the things that we do. And so I guess, kind of the approach that we take with families is like you're talking about, when the patient comes to treatment, that's a really scary time in their life. Well, most of the time it's a mirror of what the families are going through, but the families are experiencing all those emotions in a real, unaltered state. And so that's what I always talk about. The difference between the patient and the families is everything the family feels is real. and the patients are still in that altered state. But our family program at Lakeview, we start out usually within 48 hours. We try to do it within the first 24 hours of the patient getting there, but it's not always, we're not always able to achieve that. But what we do initially upon receiving a new client with us is we reach out to the family and we make an initial family phone call. That call is to, kind of get the real story. For some reason, the patients don't always want to tell us everything that's going on.
Imagine that.
Yeah. And so we kind of validate, the patient as they're coming in, what they're telling us, but then we also make that initial call to the family to get that collateral information. At the same time, during that phone call, what we start doing there is connecting families to resources. We provide them with an email that has links to Al Anon, to Nar-Anon, to other community recovery programs, Celebrate Recovery. If it's in the room, so they know where the resources are. Um, we also send a link in that email to a family survey. And that survey that the family gets, as many people in the family as they want to have fill that out can fill that out, because it's the family's opportunity to say to the client how this addiction has impacted them. That doesn't go to the client, it goes to their therapist. And so we get that information. And if there are some really critical points as that patient works through their treatment process, we're using those questionnaire forms. And we also send them all the information on our family program. And that's, we have a Monday support group for families. And in the evening, we have a support group for spouses and intimate partners. So we split our family program into family members, moms, dads, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, in-laws, outlaws, whoever's on that level. We do them in a group, and then in the evening we do just the spouse and intimate partner, because we recognize that the level of trust, the detail, the intimacy, the things that you're talking about are so different between spouses and family members. Um, so that's a lot of information that I just gave you. Imagine the family on that first phone call when they see all of this. It's like, where do I start? And so after that first family call, within the first 48 hours, I personally follow up within the first 7 days with all that information. I send them an email. I just have two links, whether they're the family member or the spouse intimate partner. I send them the video link to join that group and a consent form to sign so they can participate in that. And then I provide them my information. I tell them again, reiterate what we offer for the families and encourage them to do that. And so they get, within the first, 3 to 5 days, they're getting two exposures to someone asking them to get involved in this recovery process.
Which is what I really love hearing. I mean, first of all, a
Yeah.
couple things that I think are really, really exciting, which is that you do understand there is a difference between the intimate partner and the
Oh,
family, because people
yeah.
don't necessarily
Yeah.
realize that there is a
Yeah.
distinction. And
Yeah.
most everything you're doing is virtually. Is my understanding
Yeah.
that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So, yeah. I think that's my brain kind of squirrels off every,
no, that's
but that was,
okay. I mean, I think
yeah,
that COVID
yeah.
opened up the window for that, for a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity for us all to be able to do some wider, depth of area that we can cover, which is really wonderful in many, many ways. It really is.
And it
Um,
was cool because this morning, the family support group, I'm just counting up here because I've got my sheet in front of me. I had 9 family members, and they were in Wisconsin, Colorado, New York, New Mexico, Arizona, and Florida.
yeah,
I mean, we're touching people all over the
it
United
is, and
States
it,
with this
yeah,
group.
it's awesome. One of the things that I thought was really interesting that you said was that you guys send out this survey to all these different family members, or as many as
Mm-hmm.
that would like to. What a
Mm-hmm.
great, great concept to help the therapists themselves get a much more well-rounded view
Oh
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
client. So tell me a little bit more about what that looks like, obviously without divulging any information that would be confidential, but how that might help a therapist be able to understand the client better.
Yeah. And I think I'm a person in long term recovery. I always do some full disclosure. And a
As am I.
part of this, yeah, a part of this disease, as you know, is this process of guilt and shame. And
Yes.
we use these surveys to start looking at that amends process and their recovery. And if we get 10 surveys back and there are 10 family members that have just exhausted themselves trying to help this patient, we know that cycle of guilt and shame is pretty deep because they've got all of this. And so we use that information with the patients, not to go through what she said or what she said, but what is the process underneath this? And how do you begin to live amends to the people that are important in your life? And a lot of times, moms will fill it out and talk about the impact on the relationship with the children, and so that it gives us an opportunity to really, like you said, get that picture of what's going on for them and really deepen kind of the step work that they begin doing. You know, I think everyone that comes into treatment at Lakeview, at some point, we look at these phases they go through, and that initial withdrawal, and just they're angry at themselves, they're angry at everyone, and suddenly when the brain starts to come back up and get to this normal view again, it's like, okay, I'm better. I need to come home. I love you. I'm sorry. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, back up. Let's look at, the things that we need to prepare you to go back to. And that's how we use that. It identifies barriers for us. We know there's always, resentment
Yep.
with the patient and with the family members. And so we just prepare them to work through that process. Um, and,
Which is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, what a
yeah,
gift.
with the therapist having that level of understanding of, what all's been impacted, and our case managers work just as close with the employer. If they put their employer on consent, they're on FMLA, we're talking to their HR, we're getting all that paper. We'll do that for them when they get there.
Right.
Um, and protect their confidentiality about why they're in treatment and stuff. But again, we try to, help them understand that that's a part of their recovery is rebuilding all those relationships with their employers, their creditors, the legal system,
Yeah,
whatever it
exactly.
is.
I mean, it's all the way around, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when I think of family, I always get shocked when, or what for me, it's always fun when I'm working with a family member to see what their biggest shock is when they
mm,
start to delve into, what's going on, when they have their aha moment,
mm,
about like, oh, wait a
yeah,
minute, maybe it's not just the addict
yeah,
or the alcoholic.
yeah,
Maybe I do play a role in all of this.
yeah.
Tell me what you think, for you guys, is always that eye-opening experience, or do you see that a lot when you're dealing with your family members? And how do you guys start to help them understand that they also do play a role in
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of this?
We do a lot of work around self care, okay,
Hmm.
and setting healthy boundaries. I think everyone comes in saying, I just want to be supportive. And I say, well, being supportive looks like holding some boundaries,
Yes.
But usually, if you're talking about like a aha moment, it's, for me, it's most of the time the aha moments aren't good moments for families. I call it the disenchantment phase.
Yep.
They just become so helpless, hopeless in themselves. They lose their own sense of who they are. And it becomes more important to save their loved one than it is to even take care of themselves. And so it's that disenchantment that we meet a lot of families there. And, if you know recovery, like I know recovery, step one's powerless. And, just being honest about why are we here. And again, I use that 12-step philosophy in the recovery, even with families. Why are you here? Because you're powerless over this relationship and what this addict's doing in your family. And you need to take ownership of that. And then step two, I always tell them, is about restoring hope. And so when they come to us with that disenchantment, it is just getting them to kind of start really understanding why are we here. Everything that you've done out of love. But I tell you what, I've been doing this for 20 years, and a mom told me one time, I loved my oldest son to death. I'm
Yep.
not going to make that same mistake. And that just everybody that was in that meeting's like, oh my God, okay, you're right. You can't love them into sobriety, but you can love them to death. And so that's always a good kind of pivot point. When they get honest about that, and you just start to restore hope.
I
Then the
would
work,
agree. Yeah,
yeah,
because I can only look at my own. For me, it was
yeah,
much easier to get sober than it was
yeah,
to deal with the addict in my life and
yeah,
recognizing how sick I
yeah.
had become.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
really, like, and it's insidious, right? They don't even
yeah,
realize or recognize that they too have become so sick.
yeah,
And I think I think you said it beautifully, how disenchanted you become and
yeah,
you don't even realize how you got there
yeah,
and how much are, the behaviors, not setting a boundary, not taking care of yourself, not even recognizing that you're almost acting as crazy, except you're stone cold
yeah,
sober, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
you don't
absolutely.
even recognize it. But so to be able to see that, and I loved how you said when you start to restore the hope, you
Yeah,
recognize that there is hope and
yeah,
you become, start to get life back
yeah,
again inside yourself,
yeah.
except
And the
better.
thing, yeah, and the thing that I really like the way our program is structured. We've got the therapists that are working with the patients here. I'm
Mhm.
working with the families, and we share that information together.
Yes.
So it's putting the therapist in line with what's going on at home, what's going on with the family, because each week the therapist is doing a individual family session with that patient and their family. And so the family has my group, kind of like a psychotherapy group, that they're gaining the support and the tools, and the patients over here gaining them, and then they get together once a week and practice what we're implementing. And then once we have a patient in treatment for 3 weeks, after day 21, they're eligible to participate in a 2-day intensive family workshop. Again, it's a virtual family workshop that I run, and they're on the same team because they're family. They love each other, husband, wife, mom, dad, whatever it is. But they're not always on the same field playing the same game. And so that 2-day workshop takes everything that they've been talking about with their therapist and learning, everything that I'm talking to their family about and learning, and we put it together in the same room for 2 days. And we go through why your family's setting boundaries now, what has happened. And, it's not so. What I try to do is one of my little Dennisisms is I want to normalize instead of pathologizing. If they're doing something, there's a reason they did it that way. Okay. Help me understand that so that you both see what you are doing. Now, what do we want to do different? And why do we want to do it different? So we understand the value that we're trying to reinstill in our family. And so that's kind of the premise that we start that with. And so we build from there with setting boundaries. We talk about communication skills. And to me, the strength of our workshop is we do um, a communications exercise that each participant's only role is to listen. If they start to respond, if they start, no. Don't go there yet. That's not your turn. You need to listen and acknowledge what you hear them say. And I've done this family workshop now for 4 years, and I've not had a family that's been able to get through all those communication barriers that come up. They listen to respond. They want to be right. They want to defend. They want to, all these things that happen. And I tell them, your only role is to listen and acknowledge, and so that workshop, takes place, on the second half of their treatment. And it usually gives them a really good foothold going forward, because now they've got some tools that they're working together. Those last 2 sessions, maybe 3 sessions that they get with their therapist and family, always super, super productive. And the thing that I love hearing is when any family member leaves that workshop and goes, I just feel so much more hopeful now. I'm like, yes.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
right? And I always try to tell our clients, right? Same kind of thing, right? Your family would not be here if they
Oh, yeah.
were, you know what I mean? Like, because people go like, oh, see, they don't get me. They don't get me. And I'm like, listen, your family would not be here if they did not want to make this thing work and if they
Yeah.
didn't love you. You
Yeah.
would not be here if you did not want to make this thing work and you didn't love them. It's really hard, but hard things pay off in huge dividends if we spend a little time and get uncomfortable. We have to get uncomfortable to make progress. If we just keep
Yeah.
doing what we've been doing, we're never going to get anywhere, right? So this is what's amazing. I love that. It
Yeah.
sounds like it's an amazing workshop. Yes.
Yeah. A part of that workshop, we also do, family systems theory. We talk about the problems and
Yeah.
that, this addiction's, for some people, this addiction's a coping skill for other problems.
Yes.
And we talk about those iterative or iterative, the negative feedback loop. When you do this, my response is this.
Yes.
And you cope with me doing this by doing more of that. And that's not going to work. And I tell families all the time, it's like a baby mobile. It doesn't matter who gets the addiction. It pulls the family off balance.
Right.
And if you look at my hands, the more an addict underfunctions, somebody in that family is automatically in a role where they have to overfunction. And so what we want to do is stabilize that family and get everybody back on an even balance. And so I talk to the families and through the workshop, through our homework, through my support groups, that's the central focus is you can't continue to overfunction. You have to set those boundaries. I also talk about not just over functioning, but following through with consequences.
Yes.
To me, I'll have younger kids that are dealing with mom and dad, and they'll say, "I want to go to sober living," and I say, "Well, okay, but here's the thing about sober living. I want you to know, and I'm just going to be upfront with you. Sober living is going to set boundaries, and they're going to follow through. And if you're not committed to sobriety, you better go home." Okay, mom and dad will take care of you. Sober living will put you out on the street. And that's sometimes it gets that difficult for them.
Yep.
It's not always, it's not, they're not always going to do that. They'll get you back into treatment. They'll get you, the help that you need. But a lot of times families don't follow through and set those boundaries, and it just perpetuates the cycle. Makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do, right? I mean, the enabling
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
families and the fear that runs around,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's been one of the greatest challenges I've ever had, which is to help families understand that
Yeah.
what they think that's doing that is so good is actually
Yeah. Yeah.
not so good oftentimes.
Here's one of my Dennisisms, as I call them, and other patients have called them. But I tell
Love
the
it.
families they have two tasks early in recovery.
Okay.
Okay? Their two tasks early in recovery is turning fear into hope
Yep.
Instead of talking to them about the things they're afraid of, tell them what you hope they do different.
Yep.
And then they need to turn task two is to turn their anger and resentment, the things they're mad about, afraid of, been hurt by, that's been wrong, bad, hurtful, whatever it is, turn that anger and resentment into a boundary through a want and need statement. Instead of me telling you I'm mad about how much money you spent or I'm mad about you wrecking the car or going to jail, I need to tell you what I want or need from you instead of that behavior. And I need to set boundaries around that. Because, I'll ask family members, what are the things that are happening? And you've probably heard this in the rooms. The single biggest barrier in healing a relationship is resentment.
Oh, for
And,
sure.
and resentment is simply the lack of forgiveness. And so I tell families, I'm not asking you to forget these things that have happened. I'm telling you to write them down and turn them into what you want or need and talk to them about that.
Right.
Because if you let them slide, you pretend like it didn't happen, you don't talk about this, it's going to whack a mole the rest of your life.
That's right.
It's going to
Well,
keep
it
talking.
perpetuates the
Yeah,
problem, correct? I mean, we
absolutely.
just keep rolling it on down the road and it just keeps happening again and again and again, right? Sort of like that definition of insanity. We just keep doing it a
Mhm.
different way and then we don't wonder why things keep happening this way. It sounds like, the program is really solid. Do they have any kind of follow up for families once the client leaves? I know you guys have, continuing for the patient themselves, and you guys have, groups for them. Do you also have that for the family once a client leaves?
Right now, we do not. We push our families to get involved in their community.
Of course.
And so through every meeting, no matter where they're at, because we have such a volume of patients,
Yeah, you guys
and
would have so many
I'm
people, it would be
I'm
crazy.
one therapist. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm one therapist.
Yeah.
So, I do tell,
So it'd be
um,
people like they should come see people like us then at this point.
yeah, absolutely. So we try to link them with the community
Yeah.
providers if they're doing family
Yeah.
therapy. We try to get them involved in Al-Anon as a support
Of
group or
course.
Nar-Anon
Wonderful.
as a support group. So, that's a theme through that. And I love it when family members tell me in my group that, I got a sponsor. I'm like, yes.
Yes, I
Okay.
know.
Now that
I know.
now
It's
they're
awesome.
working. Now they
Yeah,
get it. Okay.
exactly.
And so, but yeah, we also connect them with the therapist in the community if that's
Yep.
some of the ongoing work. But I always tell the patient that, a lot of patients want to do the 129 step. Okay. I know why I'm here. I got a problem. I'm so much better now. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
That's not
Yes.
how it works.
No, it's not. No, it's
I
not.
tell the patients that when your family's ready, okay,
Yes.
and um, it's okay for you to say, I'm not ready yet, because I don't want you just leaving saying, I need to go home and fix my wife now, or I need to go home and fix my parents. No, okay. When your parents have done some work, ask them, if you want to do that work with them, ask them, when they're ready, and they'll
Yeah.
let you know. And, so that street goes both ways. And I always prepare the families because, we're talking about setting boundaries with the patients. The patients are going to set some boundaries with family members too.
Yep.
That's a
Absolutely.
two-way street, and it needs to be. And that's why, when family members start talking to me about consequences, I say, I'm the wrong person to talk to. Okay. Because consequences are a result of your conversation that you have with your loved one. When you talk about the boundaries that have been violated, how they got violated, and what you're trying to do differently. And if we're not successful, what's the consequence? It's not hit the street most of the time, but it needs to be natural, logical consequences.
Yep.
And you have, um, some stuff on there. One of my favorite analogies is, and I know everybody's heard it, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But for God's sake, lead the horse to water. Okay, that's Al-Anon. And then If the horse still doesn't drink, salt the oats. You know, make the taste, make the taste in their mouth so
That's
bad
right.
they have to drink.
Right.
And for family members, they'll do the first two, okay? But
Yep.
sometimes when it comes to actually following through, salting the oats a little bit and saying there's some consequences here.
Yeah.
And that's what, in my experience, for people who struggle in recovery, it's the salted oats that they continue to get fed that puts them right where they need to be, getting the help that they need for their addiction.
Well, I love it. I love it. Got to be honest with you. Some really great, powerful words today. You guys have some really
Right.
solid programs. We
Yeah.
love Lakeview. We love Lakeview.
Yeah.
We send people there all the time, have had a long, long, long term relationship with you guys.
Yeah.
And, I think there's not anything that I could say that could sing your praises any louder. I don't
Awesome.
think.
Yeah. And it's I think the people who work at Lakeview, they call us difference makers, because everybody there is invested in making a difference in this
Yes,
world, and in each individual's life and in their families' lives. Gandhi had a big vision: be the change you want to see in the world. I tell families, just be the change you want to see in your family.
that's right.
And that's your role. Good deal.
It's not a bad way to look at that, is it? No,
Yeah, yeah.
it's really
That's
not.
right.
Well, it was absolutely my pleasure. I don't know
Yeah,
if there's
no,
any closing little statements that you want to make for today, but I hope that we can chat again in the near future.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Like we were talking about, if we can talk about that professional's role one
yes,
day, I'd be happy to do it again. Yeah.
it would be
Okay.
super. It would be
Awesome.
super. Dennis,
Good
it was
deal.
my pleasure letting you and having you spend some time with me today. I really appreciate it. Like I said, we love Lakeview. There is nothing that we wouldn't do for you guys, and I know the same is true for you.
Yeah.
We've been, cohorting in crime together for many, many, many
Yeah.
years, and we appreciate all that you do for not just your families, but
Yeah.
for the addicts and alcoholics, professionals, men, women, teenagers, etc. We sing your
Yeah.
praises strongly, and we appreciate you. We are family and addiction experts here, Di
Yeah.
McQueen and Brian Jackson. And, we have our own webpage. We have some free resources with families as well. We feel very strongly that the two go very strongly hand in hand, and think it's really important that both sides of the aisle get help.
Mhm.
So we're here for you as well. This is Healing Families Shattered by Addiction, and we thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks so much for joining our podcast, Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more important tools, techniques, and ways for you to focus on you instead of the alcoholic or addict in your world.
Until then, please go to our website, familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's familyandaddictionexperts.com. You'll also see links to our Facebook and Instagram pages. Please also, if you have any emails that you would like to send us, that's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. With any thoughts, feelings, questions that you may have for us, we would love to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.